So welcome to our explanation of the floating egg. So before we start, I just want to review some information from a previous presentation. Matter is the stuff that makes up everything in the universe. Matter is made up of tiny things called atoms. Everything made up of atoms has something known as mass. Mass helps us measure the amount of a substance. So you have the mouse that has less mass and the elephant, which has much more mass. Here you have another example of that. On the right, that object has much more mass. Those blue spheres inside are representing the molecules or the atoms inside that object, so it has much more stuff inside of it. On the left, that object has less mass, less blue things inside of it. If you were to put these two objects on a balance, the one with more mass would make the balance go down. So now we have some new stuff, some new information. So we have two objects, one that takes up a small amount of space, one that takes a large amount of space. The same mass can be spread out in a large space, like the object on the right, or packed into a small space, like the object on the left. You'll notice that both objects have 5 green spheres inside of them. That's to represent the amount of mass. So here Maya and Maddie give an example.
Hi everyone! We're going to show you how we can squish mass into a smaller space and then it's going to have a much bigger space.
Okay, so show them the squishies.
So these are the squishies we're using.
Okay.
And we're going to, so when they're squished, like this, the mass is squished into a small space.
Okay, and then what happens when you
And
let
then
go?
when it's unsquished like this, it's in a larger space, so it has more space to spread out.
Okay, great. So keep watching this video to learn a little bit more about mass and another thing called volume. So both objects here, the hay on the left and the bricks on the right, they have the same mass. They would weigh the same amount on Earth. But in the hay, the mass is spread out in a large space. In the bricks, the mass is packed into a small space. So here's our new word. The amount of space that an object takes up is known as its volume. So for our hay, the hay takes up more space, therefore it has more volume. The bricks take up less space, therefore they have less volume. Now back to our question. Why does the egg float in the salted water? Something called density determines whether an object will sink or float in regular water. To find out an object's density, we need to pay attention to two things, mass and volume. Now remember, mass is the amount of stuff, and volume is the amount of space which that stuff takes up. So here we have two objects. Now notice both have the same volume. They take up the same amount of space, the two cubes. But the one on the right has much more mass. It has much more stuff inside of it. So it has those blue spheres. They represent the mass. There's many more of those on the right than in the object on the left. Therefore, the one on the right has high density and the one on the left has low density. Here, both objects have the same mass. Those green spheres represent the stuff inside of them. They both have the same amount of stuff, but the one on the right has a bigger volume. That same stuff takes up a larger space. It's spread out. So an object is said to have high density when its mass is greater than its volume. An object is said to have low density when its mass is less than its volume. So for tap water, it's a little bit different. The amount of water is about the same, or the amount of mass is about the same as the amount of volume. So mass is equal to volume. So if an object has a greater density than the water, it will sink. The egg has a higher density than the tap water. So for an egg, the mass is greater than the volume, which means that there's lots of stuff in a small space. So let's change the water so that the egg will float. So Maya and Maddie will show us how.
Hi everyone, welcome to the second part of our video. In this part of the video, we're going to be showing you this egg. Earlier, we did this is just normal tap water. So we put the egg in and it sank to the bottom, as you can see. And now we're gonna add more mass into the same amount of space.
Okay, so Maddie, why don't you add the 2 tablespoons of salt? So it's adding more mass to the water. Okay, so then
we've already prepared. So when you do it, you're gonna want it to be all. You're gonna let it sit so all the salt dissolves. We did this earlier, so all of our salt has dissolved. And so now we're gonna put this egg into here. So now that the tap water has salt in it, it has more density. So, and the egg has less density now, or the egg has less density and the other one has, and the salt water has more density. So now I'm gonna put this in and it should float.
All right, excellent work. So the density is why it floats. Okay, keep paying attention to this video to see a little bit more. Thank you very much. So just to review, the mass of the egg is greater than its volume. For the salt water, the mass is much greater than its volume. So the salt water is going to go to the bottom and the egg will go to the top. So the egg floats because it has less density than the salted water. Thanks for watching. See you later.